A couple of weeks ago, I went to interview for an e-commerce position, and I ran into a bait and switch. Um, as everyone knows, I've been out of work for about 7 years now, and I am desperate to get a new full-time job. However, there are just some lines I'm just not going to cross. And I ran into one of those when I went to interview for this position. Now, over the last 7 years, I have gained a lot of e commerce experience selling paperbacks and ebooks on Amazon and selling collectibles on eBay. And I thought I had a good record that I could bring in and a lot to offer, this organization. I mean, I've sold over 5,000 ebooks on Kindle and Smashwords, and I've sold had over at least about 100 transactions on eBay that went through with no problems. So I thought, I would be a perfect fit for this organization, and I thought this would be, a good opportunity for me. But when I got there and did the interview, I ran into something that, was pretty much very, very unethical and quite possibly might have been a criminal. Um, I went to the interview in the garment district and I found myself, at this wholesaler, and we start the interview off, he gives me he shows me a dress, because it was a place that sold dresses wholesale, and they said they needed help with their catalog. We talked about, my experience with Photoshop, my experience with eBay, my experience with Amazon, and they asked me to write, some copy, and I could write copy, no problem, because I've written back cover blurbs for all of my novels, and I've also done, a lot of copy work for eBay as well. And he asked me to write a quick piece of copy for an outfit that he had there, and I wrote that up. We talked about, my experience. They asked me if I knew HTML. Unfortunately, I do not know HTML that well. I mean, I have modified some codes when I, downloaded them to embed YouTube videos to shrink um, the video box. And I've also, modified some code to shrink down banners and stuff, but I'm not well enough in HTML to actually write something all the way down, but I can work with it in a template. But we go from talking about that to, the guy manager comes in and starts asking me, after he gets the copy and stuff, if I give you something to sell, um, could you sell it? And I said, no problem. And I asked him what it was, and he said he would want me to sell hoverboards. Now, as everyone knows, here in New York, your hoverboards are illegal, and you can catch a fine for having them. Um, I said I would have to think about it, and because I didn't want to just come out and say, be rude to people. And he starts talking about it'll drop ship and all this stuff. But that's what really started to smell to me, because how do we go from talking about, creating dresses, selling dresses, and creating, a catalog, helping create this catalog, to selling hoverboards? Now, you're a dress shop. What are you doing, asking somebody to sell hoverboards? And I started to smell, a stink on this interview. I said to myself, I need to find a way to get out of here. And I just, tried to play it off. And then eventually they said they would get back to me. But I saw, what I've written about in my Mangina's book, in this situation. You see, this was a classic, Mangina trap, right in front of me, and I, I knew how to deal with it. Because this is what they'll do. They'll send you to do the dirty work, and then what happens is you wind up in trouble, because if I were to have, agreed to sell those hoverboards with my eBay account, that would have been on me, and I would have been liable had that happened, because um, they would say that, they had nothing to do with it, they had nothing to do with it, and knew me or anything like that. I wasn't on their records, because it would all be under my name, under my account, and all the paperwork would be in my direction. It would not be in their direction. So I understood what was being done here, and I headed for the exit because I know for a fact that selling hoverboards in New York State is illegal, and being in possession of them is illegal. So if I have them and have them on my account and I'm shipping them, all of it is pointing to me and none of it's to him. Now he tried to sweeten the deal, saying I would get $50 for each one, but to me, my freedom and my safety are more important than money because again, I understand the intangibles of manhood. Now, I do need money and I do need to work a full time job, but this, I'm not gonna, go out here and commit crimes to get money. Um, if you have, like I said, I've had family members, give me their toys to sell on eBay, and that wasn't a problem. But I'm not gonna, go out here and take an illegal item and put it up on my account and put myself at risk, put my safety at risk, and put my reputation at risk because my reputation on eBay was pretty sterling, and it is still pretty sterling, and I don't want to mess that up, you know, dealing with somebody else's product or a product I don't know anything about or an illegal product. Now, if it's a legal product, I have no problem. I would have had no problem selling it. If he had said, you can have one of these dresses, and I want to see if you can, move it within a certain period of time, that wouldn't have been no problem because it would have been their property, and I could have, if the transactions didn't work in 2 or 3 weeks or, 2 or 3 listings, I could have just sent it back to them, and there would have been no harm and no foul. But something like a hoverboard that I have no control over or is an illegal item, I'm not going to sell. I'm not going to send that out to anyone and then wind up, liable if this item, winds up getting flagged in a system somewhere or if somebody gets caught. Um, Again, I do need a job, but I'm not going to make ethical compromises and commit crimes for some other company. Now, this is one of the classic things that your mangina likes to do. When you're in a workplace, your mangina will send you to go do the dirty tasks because again, manginas love power, but they don't love responsibility. And while you're doing the dirty work, he's the one who will make himself look like to be an angel and saying, I had nothing to do with that. He was acting on his own. That was him doing what he was doing under the table. And you're the one who will be pretty much getting jammed up while this guy pretty much, has clean hands. And when I go to work for another company, I always make every effort to have clean hands. I mean, if I'm doing work for the organization, and it's legal, I'll have no problem doing it. But I'm not going to do things that are illegal or unethical for an organization. Um, Everything that I do is pretty much on the up and up, from my eBay to the books and paperbacks that I sell on Amazon, like these featured back here, and everything like my Kickstarters are pretty much on the up and up. I do not participate in illegal activity whatsoever, and I refuse to do so for anyone. That type of business compromise I will not make. Um, and this is even though I am out of work, I do not want to compromise, my morals and my integrity to work for somebody else. I know some people will say, "Oh, then you may not ever work again," but you know, there are certain intangibles that you just do not sacrifice for any price or any position. There are certain things do not, you just do not bend on, and the things that I do not bend on are, my internal character traits and my internal character. Um, and I thought that people would value those things, conscientiousness, hard work. But the more and more that I get involved with your American workplace, I'm starting to see that, those things aren't really valued in a professional. And it's sad that those things aren't valued in a professional because, you know, I'm the kind of worker who will make every effort to do right by a business and make every right to do right by his customers. And I have done right by my customers for the last 2 years on eBay, and for the last 7 or 8 years on Amazon. If there were issues with books, I would go out of every way to fix them. I had a customer service issue about a couple months ago with an action figure that I sent out. The guy didn't get it. I quickly refunded his money, and the figure came back in the mail due to an address issue. But the issue was resolved and got positive feedback on it. But some people, they don't really have that type of customer service, and they're not going to be that kind of professional. And if you deal with them, you deal with them at their own risk. But when you deal with me, I'm going to try to make every effort to do the right thing. But going into this interview, I looked at that situation and I started to see a lot of the stuff that I wrote about in my books, like Manginas, and in that bait and switch. And because was aware of it, I was able to, find a way out of that situation without causing drama, without causing conflict, and, coming out, in one piece. Now, the best way to do that, is not to get confrontational or argumentative. Just find a way to make sure that you leave and let them go about their business. And then, what I have, and then go on to go out and try to find, the business that's right for you. And I had to go, I left there and I didn't feel bad about walking out of there. I just said, look, if God has a job for me, it will be the right job for me. And, I would rather work in the right place and do the right thing than work in the wrong place and do the wrong thing. That's all I have to say for this video. You can pick up quite a few of my books on Amazon in paperback and an ebook. And you can, check out whatever I have to offer on eBay under the SJS Direct account. That's SJS underscore direct. And there are quite a few collectibles there if you're into collecting. Um, and I often offer, pretty decent prices. Again, that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.